27 trillion. That's how much value Chainlink's oracles processed in 2025 alone. The entire US stock market is worth about $50 trillion. So in 1 year, this network moved the equivalent of more than half of the US stock market. I did a video in September 2024 where I went through Chainlink's biggest partnerships, and at the time, a lot of those deals were still pretty early. Companies were testing things, running pilots, figuring out how this actually works at a large scale. What's happened since then tells a completely different story, and when you stop looking at these partnerships one by one and start looking at them all together, a pattern shows up that's pretty hard to ignore. So let me walk you through it, and let's take a look at where we are today. Before we walk, don't forget to subscribe, because if you don't, you might miss out on some cool giveaways and some awesome videos, so you better follow for some good luck. Well, you don't have to do that, but it would be greatly appreciated. Let's start how money actually moves. If you've ever done an international bank transfer, SWIFT was almost certainly involved. It connects 11,000 financial institutions and handles over $5 trillion every single day. The backbone of global payments, and SWIFT is now building on Chainlink. At Sibos last year, the annual gathering of the world's biggest banks, SWIFT and Chainlink announced something called the Digital Transfer Agents. UBS was the first major asset manager to adopt this. What it does is let banks initiate blockchain transactions using the same messaging system they've already been using for decades, ISO 222, the language they already speak. Nothing gets ripped out, nothing gets replaced, the blockchain just sits underneath and the bank keeps working exactly the way it always has. And it goes further than just SWIFT. Euroclear and DTCC, the institutions that settle the vast majority of security trades in Europe and the US, are both part of a 24-institution initiative with Chainlink focused on corporate actions processing. That's the whole messy process of handling dividends, stock splits, mergers, basically everything that happens after a trade closes. The industry loses an estimate of $58 trillion or $1 billion a year to inefficiencies here. Chainlink is in the middle of solving it with Euroclear and DTCC at the table. Then there is SBI Group, Japan's largest financial conglomerate with over $200 billion in assets. They made Chainlink their exclusive infrastructure for their entire digital asset platform. If you want to know more about SBI, I interviewed their COO last year, so definitely go check out that interview in the video here in the corner. And then you have ICE, the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange. It is routing forex and precious metal pricing data on-chain through Chainlink. So the pipes that move money globally are increasingly running through this network. Now look at what's actually flowing through these pipes. Ondo Finance is currently the biggest platform for tokenized stocks and ETFs. Over 100 assets live, hundreds of millions locked in. They made Chainlink their official data standard for everything. Every price, every dividend, every corporate action, all going through Ondo, and it runs through Chainlink's data infrastructure. Canton Network is a blockchain built exclusively for the kind of institutions that have entire compliance departments and legal teams reviewing everything before it gets touched. They support over $6 trillion in real-world assets and process $280 billion in repo transactions every single day. They joined Chainlink's infrastructure program back in September last year. Then you've got JP Morgan, the largest bank in the United States with $3.9 trillion in assets, running Chainlink's powered pilots on its Kinesis platform. And Mastercard, whose network reaches over 3 billion cardholders, partnered with Chainlink to let people buy crypto on-chain directly. And just a few days ago, BridgeTower Capital announced they're integrating Chainlink's full stack to tokenize over 11 billion in securities with a broader pipeline about $25 billion. These are regulated institutions with fiduciary duties. They don't make permanent infrastructure decisions on a whim. Now, the biggest obstacle to all of this was never the technology. If you've watched my previous videos, you know it's all about compliance. A bank doesn't care how elegant the code is. They care about whether they can explain this to a regulator when something goes wrong. That's a completely different problem, and it took a while for Chainlink to fully solve it, but they've solved it. Chainlink and Chainalysis built cross-chain compliance workflows directly into the protocol. So when an institution moves assets across chains, the compliance checks runs completely automatically. Apex Group and Chainlink built stablecoin infrastructure for the Bermuda Monetary Authority's oversight program, meaning a government regulator is now using Chainlink as part of how they supervise the market. Going to S&P Global, the agency that rates the creditworthiness of governments and corporations. It is publishing stablecoin stability assessments on-chain through Chainlink. And then last week, Chainlink receives Deloitte's SOC2 Type 2 certification. You can see this in my last video as well. And this is super important because banks and asset managers require this certification before they onboard any vendors. Now let's get into some interesting stuff. The US Department of Commerce is publishing official microeconomic data on-chain through Chainlink's data feeds. The Bureau of Economic Analysis figures, the actual government numbers that financial products around the world reference, going directly on-chain automatically through Chainlink. Sergey Nazarov joined the CFTC Innovation Advisory Committee and was at the White House Digital Asset Summit. The Genius Act passed, and the infrastructure that makes compliant, interoperable stablecoins technically possible, like CCIP, Proof of Reserve, the automated compliance engine, it's all Chainlink. So when you zoom out and look at everything together, and I mean really look at it, what you're seeing is every single layer of the global financial system landing on the same platform. The institutions that are moving money globally, like SWIFT, Euroclear, DTCC, SBI and ICE, they're all using Chainlink's products. And then you have the institutions managing and tokenizing assets like Ondo, Canton, JP Morgan, you have Mastercard, BridgeTower, and then you have the compliance and rating infrastructure like Chainalysis, S&P Global, the Bermuda regulators, and Deloitte. And now you have governments themselves publishing official data through Chainlink too. I want to compare this with what happened to SWIFT in 1973. Once enough major players committed to that standard, staying outside became more expensive than joining. The network effect took over and the standard just won. And there's no second place, there's no alternative. It's just you join or you get left out. Now I've been covering Chainlink since 2019 and I've seen a lot of announcements that went nowhere, but these are different. Look at the names of the counterparties, the depth, the pace of it. CCIP volume grew almost 2000% last year. $27 trillion processed. You have fresh Deloitte certification, US government data on-chain, a $6 trillion institutional network going all in. If you want to go look back at my old video from last year, you can kind of see where it all started and what original partnerships I was discussing back then. I think I was in that video, you have Sony and some telecom giants. And if you compare that video to this video, you will realize how much Chainlink actually changed in just 1 year. So thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye bye.